Hello all, and welcome to another episode of Hyper Blue Reviews. I'm your pal J-Town, and today I'd like to talk about a little indie gem known as Lydia. Let's begin the review. Lydia is a narrative-driven game where you follow the story of Lydia through various points in her life. There are 4 major scenes where you navigate the young girl through creepy environments at pivotal points in her life. The game is brought to us by Platonic Partnership and published by Nakano.io, and I apologize if I butchered that name. It's a game that doesn't pull any punches with its depressing subject matter, alcoholism and how it affects a little girl. The game is available on Steam and the Nintendo Switch. For this review, I will be focusing on the Nintendo Switch version. The story begins with 3 neighborhood kids talking about what one of them is getting for her birthday. The scene ends and we see Lydia interact with her father. Her father begins to tell her a story about a monster. This is your first chance to make decisions in the game, but no matter what you choose, the dialogue doesn't change. That's right. This game is another one of those games that gives you dialogue options, but nothing about the story changes. Lydia is scared by her father's story and is sent to bed before she's able to hear the end of it. The mother and father don't seem to care that she's scared, they just want her to go to her room. While Lydia's in her room, she searches for her lost teddy bear, Teddy. After finding Teddy, she sees a bright light coming from her closet. She decides to enter it and she's transported to another world, Narnia. Oh, no, wait, sorry, that's a different story. She's transported to a fantasy land where nothing can hurt her and everything is colorful and fun. Until you reach the next screen. Lydia and Teddy encounter a strange creature with a frightening appearance. Lydia approaches it to question whether he is a good monster or a bad monster, but the creature doesn't have a whole lot to say. She decides to find a hero that could fight the monster. However, all she can find is a drunken knight. The drunken knight confronts the monster but doesn't put up much of a fight. He collapses in a drunken stupor and the chapter ends. There are 2 very clear themes for this game: alcoholism and confronting monsters. It's very early on that we learn Lydia's parents are not very fond of her. The father and mother have a hard time giving up their social lives after the birth of their daughter. So much so that they frequently have loud parties at their house after Lydia goes to bed. In fact, they often send her to bed early so they can prep for their parties. The parties involve heavy drinking, which causes the guests to get rowdy and contributes to the monsters that Lydia sees in her imaginary world when she's young. This is seen in the first chapter when Lydia's imagination runs wild after her dad mentions a monster in his story. The noises from the party guests exacerbates things and she imagines frightening monsters. This is further exemplified during the second chapter. Lydia is now slightly older and decides to traverse through a dark and creepy forest with Teddy. She's afraid that she may run into a monster, but none ever appears. I saw this as Lydia is now old enough to realize that the loud people in her home aren't really monsters, so there isn't really anything to be afraid of, but the situation itself is still scary as the guests are complete strangers. She feels lost even in her own home. In fact, this chapter is where we hear that her father does not actually appreciate or even love his daughter. It's very sad, and the emotion through the art style is captured very well. I won't go into detail in chapters 3 and 4 as things really hit the fan, but I will say the quote-unquote final boss looks amazing, and is very symbolic of what Lydia has to deal with in her life. The game plays more like a visual novel than anything else. There are scenes where you get to walk around, but there are no actions besides clicking A on certain objects. As I stated previously, the dialogue choices don't matter in this game. Choosing one choice over the other has zero effect on the dialogue whatsoever. You'll also have to pay attention when you progress the dialogue, though. If you click too fast, you may accidentally select a dialogue choice that you didn't mean to. Again, it doesn't matter what you pick, as you get the same story regardless, but if you want to play Lydia as a strong character in the face of bad parenting, then you have to make sure to go slow to pick the right choices. The game only takes an hour and a half to beat if you're a slow reader, but there's quite a bit of story packed in there. I'm not sure if this game will receive an update in the future, but I do hope we can see some extra chapters added to the game. It would be great to get an additional chapter between the original 4 to show more character progression. It would also be neat if there were multiple endings. The game presents itself with having multiple endings given that there is a choice at the end, but both choices lead to the same ending. It was a little disappointing, but in terms of the overall narrative, it makes sense. The game also features a pseudo-language that the characters speak when there's dialogue on screen. Think the noise that the Sims make, or characters from Banjo-Kazooie. It's alright and fits the game pretty well, until the dramatic parts. When a sad scene is occurring, the pseudo-language just doesn't seem appropriate. That being said, you can turn the voice volume down though, so I guess it's not too much of an issue. Speaking of dramatic parts of the game, the music also does a great job at setting the mood. It enhances scenes in all the right ways and it sounds great. The hand-drawn artwork also works really well, and the dark atmosphere fits the narrative completely. Although I do find it a bit weird that the imaginary world Lydia finds herself in are just as dark as the real world, but I chalk that up to her traumatic childhood. The art does a good job of illustrating the emotions of the character, however, the backgrounds and environments can get muddied with all the dark colors. I also found some bugs in the gameplay during my second playthrough of the game. It was nothing game-breaking, but the bugs were still present. During my second playthrough, some events were already accomplished or finished. For example, the knight was already following me once I passed the first section of the first imaginary world. Other examples involve events where you have to walk past NPCs or get past NPCs. For instance, in the third chapter, you can walk right past the drooling individual, and the kid doesn't stop you when you're on your way to the park. Like I said, nothing serious, but it can prevent you from getting the full experience during a second playthrough. That being said, this only occurred when I attempted to replay the game immediately after I beat the game. I didn't experience this issue when I recorded the footage for this review, so I'm guessing it was patched or those bugs only occurred because I just finished the game. All in all though, this game provides a memorable, emotional experience as a visual novel, but the dialogue options seem unnecessary in the grand scheme of things and can lead to frustration as you try to play the character in different ways. It's also a very short experience for the price tag. The game can be downloaded on Steam and Nintendo eShop for $4. That's about $1 per chapter. There's also an option to purchase additional content for $1, on the Switch at least. The net revenue from this is donated to a charity involved with helping kids that have experienced abuse due to parental substance abuse. It's actually a very nice thing that the developers and publishers are doing. All in all, Lydia has great artwork, a great atmosphere, and a compelling story. I believe that these features are enough to make it stand out amongst other indie titles. I would definitely recommend giving it a try. I give Lydia 4 Drunken Nights out of 5. As always, thanks for watching.